Hopefully you're not too sleepy, right? Not yet. Yes, you are, right? That's why you're at the front. That's why you're at the front now, right?
I'm very happy that this year again, I'm the third host of Erich Buhler. And although his name suggests so, he is not speaking German.
No, I'm 100% Uruguayan. You're not going to believe that, right? Erich Buhler. And my second name is Ralph. So it sounds like even more Austrian or German.
Yes.
I'm not surprised every time I go to Germany, come here, I go to the hotel, I expect people to just talk to me in German. I'm not surprised at all. Yes.
I think.
Let's try and see.
I think it's still wrong.
Still wrong? Yes.
It's still wrong.
Okay. This is experimentation and fail until we get it, yeah? Let's try on the other side. Let's see this side. I'm not sure that it's going to get better, but it's very fashionable, this mic.
Yeah. No, it's not.
No? Try the other side?
That's the workshop we're trying.
Okay.
No, it looks good. Maybe not on this side.
Is it switch on? Okay, now it's good, yes? Very good. Thank you for the help, guys.
So thank you, and hopefully you will bring us beyond that challenge.
Yeah, so let's see how it goes. Today is 100% an experiment. As I have to be honest to you, I haven't done this conference before. The reason is, as I've been focused on writing my new book. This is the second one. The first one was in 2002. It was about .NET, Microsoft.NET. Then I decided to change. Yeah? And today we're going to be talking about exponentiality. And I have very good news for you guys. Two people are going to be the owner of these two books. Yeah, one each one, yes? So at the end, and I'm going to tell you in a bit what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to need to switch off the light just for a second. So that's going to be an experiment today. Let's see how it goes. Hopefully, I'll tell you a little bit more. So I live in Valencia, in Spain. I'm originally from Uruguay. And I've been traveling around the world. I spent last year in New Zealand. I was helping a bank there. I work in Malta. I work in many places. And I decided, after being in New Zealand, I decided not to go that far away. It was too far away all the time, going there 27 hours. It's a good trip. It's a very nice place, New Zealand, but sometimes it gets a little bit boring as it rains a lot. And Australia, fantastic. It's a very, very fantastic place. And I've been working with different cultures. And in some way, you see that every place in the world, plus minus, has the same problems. And then we started talking about Agile and other things, Scrum, Lean, etc., some time ago. And the main issue is that everything works in your mind. Everything works when you're in a conference, but then when you take everything back to the office or your company, sometimes you don't really know where to start, and sometimes you don't really know if it's going to work. And these are the objectives that we have today. The first objective today is that I'm going to explain to you what is exponentiality and why you need exponentiality in your change plans. And the second one is I'm going to help you create a plan which is scalable. And I'm going to explain to you why it's very important. And before we're going to try to get the right team, we're going to be doing some activities, yes? So I need you to form teams, 2 to 3 people, and you need to find someone, 2 more people who have something very similar to you. So I'm going to ask you to stand up. It could be the clothes, could be the hair, could be the socks color, could be anything. You have to find, or the smile, 3 people, 2 more people like you, form a group of 3 people, okay? And you have to tell that people what is in common. If you don't find anyone, just pretend, yes? Pretend that you have something similar to someone else. Find something interesting on the other person. So I'm going to ask you now to take a seat with your team. The 3 people you selected at random. Now you're a team, guys. If someone does not have a team, that's the right time to find a coincidence, to find something matching. There is always something matching. I remember once I was with one director, one of the directors of Microsoft. We were having a conversation in the car, and he mentioned, I have a motorbike. And then, wow, yeah, so I like motorbike, I said. I like the big motorbikes, and I hate the small motorbikes, the scooters. It's very dangerous here in Spain with the small motorbikes. And then he said, I have a very small motorbike. So sometimes you have to learn to pretend that there is some connection, yes? So, so if the group both full, you're gonna find another person. If you're on your own, join a team, can be 4 people, yeah, doesn't matter. And I'm gonna tell you what we're gonna be doing. So let's play a game. Everyone in this room is gonna be able to win one of the 2 books. These books, I brought them from America. I was in Canada a few days ago. They were released today in Europe. The only thing, there are 2 rules. The first rule is you have to take a picture with your phone to this. Okay, everyone taking a picture with the phone to this screen has done 50% to win it. Where is your phone? Oh my God. And there you are. You still have 20 seconds. Got it? Good quality? 3 seconds. You ready? Yeah? Okay, time to go. So now what you have to do is, you can do it in German if you want, you have to tweet it. Or you tweet it, or if you don't have Twitter, you have LinkedIn, you basically put the picture and you put the text. You can put the text in German. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose 2 people at random from everyone. So I'm going to give you 45 seconds. If you don't have Twitter and you do not have LinkedIn, don't worry. The book is available in Amazon from today, yeah, with Prime delivery, so you get the day after, okay? So what was the plan? It was delivered today. Nobody knows that the book was delivered, so it's kind of getting exponential. Don't forget the tag, don't make any mistakes, otherwise you are not going to be included into this. Yeah, and I promise after that, we're going to go straight to the point. We're going to start talking about exponentiality and how to create your plans, yeah? I would choose 2 people at random. Well, that's what exponentiality is all about, right? You can do it in German as long as you put the same hashtag. I'm sorry if you don't have LinkedIn or Twitter. I just came up with this idea yesterday night at 2 in the morning when we went dancing salsa to one of the places here and it was closed. Yeah? So next time I will refine it. So I give you 20 more seconds and we go ahead. We have so many things to do today. And I'm going to explain to you why you care about exponentiality in your company. And in general, after you understand why exponential is very important, everything changes. Companies now are very different than they were. In some way, they are the same. They are people. They work in the same way. But on the other side, they have a lot of variability. And that's why companies need a different kind of tools in order to survive, in order for people not to get too stressed when they try to implement a change. Yes? So, let's go. I give you 10 seconds. Is it too long in German? Should have chosen a shorter name for the book. Okay, time to go. 3, 2, 1. So changing companies, change is very hard. Unless you know how the change works and you know some tricks. The main issue I see in every part of the world I go is that they teach you Scrum, they teach you Agile, they teach you whatever, less safe or whatever you want. But people have no idea, or they have idea, but sometimes they don't have as much idea as you need in order to make a change in a company. Companies are very complex. So trying to implement a change in a company without knowing how change works is like trying to drive a car without knowing how the gears go. Did it happen to you sometimes that you go to a new car and you put reverse instead of placing? It happened to me some time ago. They gave me an automatic car, and I was like 20 minutes trying to figure out how to do it, until I called my sister. She lives in Spain, in France, and she has an automatic car. So it's so much simple. But for us, it's much more complex. And this is what happened with companies. We are trying to simplify companies, but it's too complex, right? How did that happen? So, honestly, you don't care about Agile or Scrum from this moment onwards. You care about exponentiality. I'm going to explain to you what exponentiality means. We have different kind of exponentiality, but let's try in terms of change. When you try to make a change, you don't care if it is Agile, less, Scrum, safe, or whatever you want to use. You want that change to become contagious inside the company. You want to teach to 1 or 2 people, and that 2 people teach to 2 or 4 or 5 or 6 people, the same we are doing with Twitter today, and then that becomes exponential. The good thing about exponentiality is after something becomes, a change becomes exponential in the company, you don't need to, it doesn't require that much effort. In the linear way, you have to go and teach to a team, and then you have 100 teams and you have to repeat it once and again, right? In an exponential way, you explain that using certain rules to a couple of people, and then what happens is that those people feel very emotional. It's very good, that's changing my life. And they follow certain rules, and they explain to more and more people, and that's become exponential. This is one of the things we see. The other thing we see is that the markets are becoming exponential, and that impacts on the company. If you take a look at photography, for example, the photography 100 years ago, it took like a month to get a photography. In the 80s, probably take 2 days, and now it takes just milliseconds, and you're able to do special effects and whatever you want to do. Why? Because this is from a guy called Kurzweil, which is he's the one of the directors of technology in Microsoft. That basically, when you take a process that you have been doing manually and you automate that in a computer, every time you change the power of that computer, the process that you were doing accelerates. So everything in real life that you translate into or you move to a computer process, every time that computer gets more powerful, what's going to happen? It's going to go faster, right? Imagine hundreds of computers around the world connecting. So that's what happened with markets today. We don't just have consumers, we also have processes that you are moving to computers. And those processes are accelerating. In fact, Ericsson did a research recently where he found that with the 5G, the technology 5G, in a couple of years, computers are going to be able to detect the bugs, and they're going to be able to inform in real time. So the feedback loops are going to go faster and faster. Every time we move something from the real world to something digital, it accelerates exponentially. Does it make sense? Yes? So whatever, you can take any technology. And what happened after is that it evolved so much quicker. It's very deceptive, as one day you see something, and 1 week after you see something which works so much better. And you know this guy? Well, he's Lin, yeah? He was the first European buyer of the book today. and was one book. Imagine I sell 2 books tomorrow and it becomes exponential. How many days do I need to sell 900 books if every day gets exponential to the previous one? 10 days? Are you sure? I have no idea. But one of the things with exponentiality is that we are very good at linear processes, something which increments slowly, but we are very bad with exponentiality. So it takes time to calculate something very simple. And now the problem is the markets with technologies became to a point where everything is changing, and it's changing exponentially. So what we can expect is that in a few years' time, probably every day, we're going to have a different packaging for our vegetables in the supermarket based on feedback. Perhaps the bottles are going to change shapes every day based on some feedback. And everything is going to go faster and faster and faster. And unfortunately, human beings are not prepared for exponentiality. And then you go back with good intentions to your company and you say, I want to implement a Scrum. And then the day after, something happened and became very complex. And your company is very complex already. And this is something I see everywhere. They try to implement a framework in a company which is already very complex, right? So then this is what happened with exponentiality. Human beings are not prepared for exponentiality. So you need to know certain rules in order to make a change plan. And this is the idea for the presentation we're going to be doing today. So you are in a group of 3 people. And I'm going to ask you something very simple now. It was not as challenging as the previous task, which is you're going to take, you have some post-its, small post-its here. And I want everyone, I'm going to give you just 1 minute to write in each post-it a change plan you have done or you're going to do. For example, implement Scrum in the company. For example, increase quality in the company. Or whatever you want to do, as soon as it's not super big, because we're going to try to experiment a little bit with that plan and exponentiality. Any change plan that you have done, or you want to do in your company in the next couple of months, just write, don't write all the plan, write just 2 or 3 words. You're going to need to explain that plan to the other person in the group in a few minutes. Do you understand? Yes? So a plan, something you want to do in your company, some change, something you could be very happy if that happened. Okay? So I'm going to ask you to grab some post-its. Grab 2 to 3 each one. Yeah? For example, implement Scrum, or for example, change the reward system in the company, or whatever you want to do. Okay? 2 to 3. I give you 1 minute, so rush here. Grab a couple of post-its. 2 to 3 each one.
Question, should be the topic or also a plan like with actions?
That's a good question. Try to put the kind of generic thing as it's just for you to remind you that you have to explain that to another person. Okay? And try to be some quite kind of concrete thing. Don't go to high level, because otherwise you're going to take the whole session to explain to that person what's your plan. Imagine you are in an ideal day in your company, how you achieve that, because you have implemented that change, right? Or you want to increase quality in the products, or people are really stressed in the company and you want to reduce something or increase something, or get rid of managers, or get rid of employees, or close down the company. Could be whatever you want, yes? So I give you 1 minute, yes? Let's see if it works. Once you're ready, you have a couple of options. You can stick them at the back of the chair. Okay, that's my PC. Yes, it's telling you that's 1 minute. Were you afraid? Or you can place them on the floor. Yeah? You put all the plans on the floor, or stick them on the chair, or place a chair at the front. It's up to you, as long as all the team can see them. Okay? But do not discuss the plans yet. Okay? Just take a look at them, place them somewhere. Okay, when you're ready. Now, just remember that you're going to need to explain to the other people from the team what you're intending to do. So, what I'm going to do now is going to do a crash course in transformation quite quickly, and then we are going to try to see if we can change something from that idea. We're going to discuss those plans, and we're going to improve them, okay? So the plan is I'm going to spend probably 8 to 10 minutes doing a crash course on transformation to see if you know everything. Some of the topics you're going to know, others probably you don't, and then we're going to apply some of the ideas into those plans, right? So basically we have 4 different approaches when you try to implement. At the end of the day, it's a mix, but in some companies, some work better than others. The first one is probably everyone knows, which is the top-down. The top-down is someone from the top saying, we want to become agile from next week. And then people tend to follow it. There are some very good advantages and disadvantages. This works very well in companies where employees trust the CEO, right? Sometimes it's not in that way. In many cases, it's not the case. But the top-down, if you need to make changes in the organization, for example, changing the values of the organization, the top-down is a good idea. Otherwise, if you do in other ways, changing one of the values of the organization, it can take for ages. Okay? So massive changes sometimes, for some specific changes, the top-down is a good strategy. Everything starts at the top, you have a leader, and the leader inspires, and then it goes in a waterfall way down. I should have said waterfall, but it was the appropriate word. A cascade, let's say, way. And then what happened here is, with the cascade, where this top-down way, Sometimes you don't know if people are doing this because they want to do it, they want to change, or because they have to follow certain orders. And this is something, in places where motivation is very low, sometimes the top-down could be a good idea as long as you understand that you have to use other techniques in order to make change sustainable. Otherwise, things are not going to change very well, or you're going to have a big turnover in your company. You're going to lose people in the company. Okay, for example, we ran an experiment in a company where we say the minimum unit in the company is 2 people. Everyone had to work in pairs. That works very well. The CEO came and said that. We tried the bottom-up approach and didn't work. Everyone had to be pairing all the time with someone else. The problem is that people who didn't like to pair left the company, right? So, second approach, local to global or bottom-up. This is very good, specifically in software companies or companies where the knowledge is at the bottom of the company. For example, if you think most of knowledge for developing a product are at the bottom of the company and not at the top. So that's why sometimes you have to make decisions first at the bottom and then go up. Otherwise, if you try top-down in a company where most of the knowledge is at the bottom, it's not that, you can't make decisions. It's too far away the top from the bottom, right? So it also has some advantages. Scrum uses this way. Most of you know the advantages of the top-down. Sometimes, the bad thing is sometimes people don't feel they have the power to convince the rest of the company. They called me a few years ago, 2 years ago, from a company in Germany, and they said, Eric, we want to transform the company. I said, okay, but you can't just talk to the to the development teams. And I said, okay, who's going to do the rest? The CEO, the upper management, etc. Oh, well, we are not going to do that now. Okay, so this kind of thing can happen. So the third approach is the organic one. So you add one thing, you see how it goes, and then you add another. The good news is that this is very good with the organic, as you can effectively see if something works or doesn't, and then you kind of roll back. The problem with this is that sometimes, even if you make a small change, the connotation in the company is very big. So it gives you kind of a false sense of security here, because you can make a small change and cause a crisis in the company, right? And then some people say, well, let's go back, but you don't, sometimes you can't go back to this emotional part of human beings, but can be very good to run experiments. Yeah? And then you have something that Jorgen Appelo mentioned today, micro-habits, but specifically I talk in the book, micro-habits apply to agile companies or digital companies. So what you do, and this is a very interesting thing, is you see what's the minimum habit you have to change in your company in order to have the biggest impact. And I'm going to tell you a story. I was working with a company. They were developing products, and every time the software developers had some problem, ran into some problem, the architects came and solved the problem. They sat with the developer and started typing and solving the problem. That was very good for the company to reach a deadline, right? But the developers didn't learn. And it was like a vicious circle. Every time they have a problem, someone came and solved the problem, right? So we just changed one micro habit. The company was trying to implement a big change plan, and I said, no, you can solve that with a small micro habit. So architects are not allowed to touch a keyboard whenever they come to this room. And that's it. Every time the architect came and sat, they had to explain to the other person why that happened. We changed one micro habit. In order to change a micro habit, you need to replace, or it has to be very clear, the micro habit. I specify in the book how to detect a micro habit. So this is an excellent technique. As you can see here, in normal plans, companies think that changes are linear. You need a big change plan to change the whole company. But what we believe is that with a micro-habit, you can have a very, very tiny change and can produce, it's not linear, it's exponential, and you can produce a huge change, right? Does it make sense? Any question, guys, so far? No? So at the end of the day, it's a mix of these four things. It's never one or the other. But what I'm going to ask you now is in your teams, just try to put some stickers and write the four approaches and locate your strategy where it's mainly. If it's using top-down, your strategy, you think it's going to work better, you put it there, both local to global, organic, or micro-habit. Yes?
Can you very briefly explain organic?
Yeah, organic is you add a process. Imagine you have to implement a Scrum. And then you go there, you add the retrospective, and you see how it goes, and 2 months after it goes well, and then you add the daily stand-up, and then you wait 2 more months until if it works, and so on. So you add small things every time, processes generally. The good thing about organic is that sometimes you feel more comfortable, but in some occasions you can lose traction. Because you start something and for some reason, they didn't like the retrospective. You know, they started doing it for 3 weeks and they stop it. So that's the problem with the organic. The organic sometimes can be very good as you control risk, but remember, changes are not linear. So you can make a small change and produce a chaos in the whole company, right? So it's adding something each time. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Yes? Any other question about any of these four? And the micro-habit is something very, very small. That small. And a micro-habit is something that, if you see, it takes to be completed 10 to 60 seconds maximum. Okay? No, sorry, you can touch the keyboard. Right? And then you play with these four things. Right? You okay with this? Can you group your plans? Do a little explanation to your partners what the change is and why you think is in that area, and then you stick it there. So you explain to the rest why you think is there, and you stick it there. And we're going to have 10 minutes to do it. If we finish before, we continue. Otherwise, we stay a little bit more there. Any question? Yes?
Where do we stick it?
So you create a panel, top-down, local to global, organic, or micro-habit, and you have a plan that you wanted to do or you have done, and you see which approach your plan was using, or your plan you think is the best option for you had in your mind. For example, if I wanted to change the values of my company want to change the values, I would probably go for top-down. Because if the CEO doesn't say that the values are changing, nobody's going to pay any attention, right? Perhaps if I want to implement a Scrum, I'm going to go local to global. Yes?
My question was where to stick them to?
Underneath, just every column. So if you think that your plan is mainly top-down, you put it here at the bottom. There are the red ones here. The way to stick it there is self-organization. Yeah? So you find you can move, you can use the whole, you have also the boards at the sides. And I'm going to give you now 10 minutes. If you need more time, you let me know, okay? Okay, 250. 50 seconds. Okay, that's the time. Let's go back. How was that? Was it good?
Yes.
Yes? Okay, now we're gonna switch off the lights. Hopefully you got a map like that. We're gonna use it soon. So I'm gonna talk about change, and we're gonna try to convert those plans into, obviously we don't have as much time as we wanted, but we're gonna try to do our best as soon as I can. There you are. So let's talk a little bit about change, and see if we can include some of those ideas into the next plan we're gonna develop soon. I was checking my phone as I was checking how many of you got the right hashtag. So basically, when we talk about change, I consider, and this is something I include in the book, that there are 3 different kinds of changes. The first one is what we call the traditional one. The traditional one has been used for many years and has been quite successful. Unfortunately, as things become and change faster and faster all the time, it does not work very well with the current situation or in companies where you have a lot of variability. Variability from the market means that everything is changing all the time, or plus minus all the time, or variability inside the company. Task that has a lot of variability is software. You can make a mistake with just one single line and you can produce a chaos in the whole company, right? There is a lot of variability here. So it does not work very well. And the organizational, the traditional ways, in general, use top-down strategies, approaches that does not necessarily have to use it, okay? And this is what I call the simple decision loop in the traditional one, that everyone would agree that is something that is common sense, but I wanted to include that in the book to be clear. This is how the simple loop works, or you expect it to work. So you have some executives trying to gather some support. They have a change idea, and then there is like a political, let's say, fight inside the company, and they get some support. Then at some point the decision is taken. They communicate the plan and try to align the company with the new plan. In some way they implement it, they measure it, they reward people, and then they evaluate the plan, take another decision, etc., and they expand it, right? Does it make sense? So what happened with this is that this loop does not scale. So in any company you want to implement Scrum or you want to be more agile, it does not work very well. First, because what I mentioned today, most of knowledge in some companies are at the bottom of the company. Second, if things are changing all the time, this buccal loop requires a lot of time. And third one, because people do not, some people, areas of the company do not feel very motivated with the simple loop decision. Does it make sense? And mainly, there are many companies using this. This is traditional. It's very good for some areas, but not for example, software industry or industry which requires a lot of innovation. Then we have what we call contagious. Do you understand what contagious is? It's like viral. Yes, very similar, viral. You have a virus and everyone gets that virus. Yeah? So every time, for example, my wife gets some, for example, cold, and I have to travel, I say, please, I don't want to take it. Yeah? And then if you have kids, probably the kids are the first one bringing the cold home. Contagious is generally the type of change that you use in Scrum. So you have a couple of guys who are very motivated, and then you bring them into the company, they motivate other people, and people from outside, they start seeing people from inside and start getting more contagious. And sometimes you don't have to do anything, and you go 3 weeks after and they are using a Kanban board, or they are using stickers, or they are doing things without you doing anything. So this is the beginning of exponentiality. Exponentiality in a company means, in a change plan, that you don't have to push the change. It's quite organic. Does it make sense? The problem with the contagious is very good, and it's an intermediate between exponential and traditional. The problem with the contagious one is that companies have limited resources. And as a result of the limited resources, what happened? Imagine I want to implement a Scrum, right? And then everything is very good until I have 2 teams and I have to find a Scrum Master and there is no Scrum Master. And then what I do? Okay, a manager, let's bring a manager. Can you be the Scrum Master for my team, right? Or, for example, there are no more developers. Or, wow, this technology does not support it. You know, we have 5 teams. So the problem with the contagious one is if you try to implement it in a company, you can use it, but you reach a point where you can't scale it properly. And the question to know if your plan is exponential or contagious is, if my company went from, how many people are in your company? 400. Okay, if it went from 400 to 6,000, could you be able to implement your plan? If not, there is not an exponential plan. Does it make sense? So any plan which is not exponential, as soon as you try to implement it, and then you're going to start seeing limited resources. Okay? And this is the first problem you have when you implement a Scrum. You implement a Scrum and then, oh, there is no Scrum Master, or you implement whatever you want, any change you want. Right? Or for example, I was 2 months waiting to talk to the CEO about how great Agile was because the CEO never had time. Right? Did it happen to you? Or something similar? So the problem with the contagious is very good. But it's very good in certain contexts. Now, with the exponential, what happened with the exponential is the exponential, you basically can expand whatever you want, and you can jump from 100 to 2,000 to 20,000, and it organically grows. Okay? And you're going to probably ask me how it works. So, do you understand the difference between the first 2, right? In the first one, nobody's very interested about copying whatever other people are doing. In here, some people say, oh, that's great, but that's just some people. And then you reach a top, and then from there you can go further. And exponentially, you can go forever. So this is my assumption. Whereas linear organizations are necessarily constrained by limited resources, exponential organizations are governed by an assumption of abundance. So what it means here, it means that at some point, if you use the contagious way, you're going to reach a point where you don't have enough resources, enough people, or enough processes that do not work very well. And this is what I call the speedometer of the exponential company. So every company, every plan, it has to consider, doesn't mean that you have to do it, but has to consider 3 different areas. First, obviously, is technology. Why? Because when you scale something, at some point you're going to run out of resources, or out of people, out of skills. How are you going to deal with that? Some of the things we do is we automate we will use automation, right? So you use automated tests if it's software, but it could be anything. So most of the things, remember, that you move to a computer are going to become exponential. If you increase the power of that computer, what's going to happen? You're going to be able to test more. You're going to be able to do more things, right? Without you doing anything or trying to hire more people. And this is very typical scenario. What happened here in the contagious thing is that as soon as the company starts to grow, the company gets frenetic about finding the right skill in the market, right? And then you don't find them. Oh, we need 2 more teams, 3 more teams, 2 more Scrum Master, and that's not work very well. So an exponential plan needs basically 3 things. The first one is the one in the center, is anything has to be replaced, any process you can, if you can, replace it by a computer process. Okay? So whatever. The second thing on the left-hand side is the processes you basically are improving or implementing, how you manage the employee engagement has to also be able to grow exponentially. And I'm going to tell you a story. One of the companies has a kind of, I don't know if you use it here, an induction course. Induction is when you join the company, they spend 1 or 2 days teaching you what to do, when to do, etc., etc. But that put a lot of stress on the human resources part, because obviously that do not scale. And then you end up there, you have like 40 people, you know, you look at the person, the human resources person, they look very tired doing that, etc., because that do not scale. So I said, how can I become this process, which engage employees, exponential? Okay, so what I did is I created a technique, which is every time a person joins the company, the team, which is in charge of welcoming that person, and this person is going to work with the team, is going to create a Kanban board with all the things that that person has to know in order to work in the company, right? Then the own person moves the stickers until it's done. And when it reaches the end, one of the people from the team has to verify that the person knows that. So, and that works very well if you have 1,000 teams, you have 1 million teams, or you have 10 teams. Yeah? So the team is creating the Kanban board with the post-it, and then discuss with the person everything they need to know. And the person moves the stickers, and the own team uses a definition of done. When this one is done, you have to talk to the rest of the team, and we check if it's done. That scales very well. Okay, that's one of the examples. The other example on the right-hand side is the customer, how you approach the customer. If you have the customers and you are able to engage 100, but you are not able to engage 1,000, or if, for example, imagine you have many customers or many products, then how are you going to get feedback from those people? And then you can't use indirect ways. You can't just hire a company to do a survey, because that doesn't work very well. And I'm going to tell you a story. Basically, now when all the Catalonia issue of Independence Day, one of the biggest banks in Catalonia decided to ask customers how good the online banking application was. So they hired a company to run a survey and ask customers about it. So what happened there was that Catalonia was divided in two. Half of the Catalonia wanted to become independent, and the other half, they don't. And that bank moved the headquarters from Catalonia to Madrid. So what happened, the people who were frustrated because of they were supporting the independence of Catalonia, they said that the application was very bad, the banking application, because they were upset with the bank, right? And the bank didn't realize that it was not because of that. And I saw the guys from the bank changing all the plans for the last 3 years because they say, no, nobody likes our application anymore. We have to change. And you have the UX trying to look after that and try to check what was happening. And they're trying to see. So you have to have certain structures that are going to be able to work. You're going to be able to get feedback even if it multiplies. So the question is always the same. Could I be able to, if it multiplies, I have 100 customers, and tomorrow I have 1,000 or 2,000. Does it work with those customers? Is there anything I can do? It doesn't mean you have to add everything in your plan, otherwise it could be an endless plan, but you have to have this concept into mind. Does it make sense? Any question about this? No? So this is the 3 things you have to have in mind about, and this is about what an exponential change is. Yeah? And for example, one of the things we generally see in companies that I mentioned to you today is that some companies want to implement a Scrum, but companies are very complex already. So what happened is, if you take a look at this, they try to become contagious and they want to try to be exponential. If the company is already complex and complicated and they have a lot of bureaucracy and try to implement the Scrum, you are adding more processes. And the more processes you are adding, the more complex the company becomes. And this is like a vicious circle. The more complex it happens, people have less time. If people have less time, they make less mistakes and they make more blockades. So before implementing anything, if you want to become exponential, you need to simplify the company first. So you can say, for example, a micro habit says, for each rule we add into the company, we will remove 2. For example, and you talk to the CEO, you say, okay, you want to add something, it's okay, but which other 2 things we are going to remove? And then an easy way to balance that. Does it make sense? Yes? Okay, and this is basically what exponential change, and this is what you can see in Amazon today, or you can see Netflix today growing, but when they grow, not just the technology is growing, as many people put just the focus on technology. We need also to focus on the processes that engage our people, that they feel motivated, but also how we engage our customers, yes? So we're going to have a real challenge now. So what we're going to ask you now is, we're going to take a look at the plan, that idea that you had. You're going to identify which of your plans could work well if you grew from 100 to 10,000 people, which one couldn't, and then if there is any of the techniques, if there is any micro habit, very, very small habit that you could change in that plan, something very small to make it a little bit more exponential. Yeah? Does it make sense? It's a big challenge. But let's see how it goes. That's an experiment, right? So I'm going to give you 10 minutes. What I suggest first is to take a look at the, I'm going to leave this one. Take a look at this and start asking some questions. Try to discover if your plans could work well or not, and how we could change it with the minimum effort. If you can just change a micro habit, something very tiny, do it. Yes? Any question, guys? No? You look at me like you are scared now. Okay, that's time. Time to go. We're going to have 10 minutes. That's it. That's very bad after having lunch, right? Any question? No? 4 more minutes.
It's a mixture.
Three more minutes. We have 3 more minutes.
Ich bin zwar Teil von dem Ganzen, aber was interessiert mich? Das hat der Chef. Genau.
2 more minutes. How do you find it? Hard? Twenty seconds.
Also bei uns gibt es halt auch eine.
Okay, that's the time, unfortunately. Let's go back. Oops. How did you find it? I think I need the gong here. So, how did you find it? Did you find it easy, medium, hard? Almost impossible.
Easy with his help.
Yes, let's agree. Some of the things are very complex, and others are easy. That's why when we do this kind of exercises, we work with a team of 2, 3, 4 people, because they can see the problem from different perspectives. And then what you have to do, obviously, is to see what you're going to measure. How do you know this is better than what you have done before? How do you know this is, because you can tell me this is exponential. How do you know that? And then you have to define some metrics in order to know. But this is a very good exercise that you can say, okay, if the company grew up and we have scarce resources, how are we going to solve that? So what we generally do in companies, we try to move some resources from linear to exponential, or even skills. Perhaps some of the, you have bunch of testers, and then you need to hire more people, but then at the same time you don't find more people, then you can automate some of these parts, and you move as much as you can to these automated things. Can you bring, anyone want to bring some of the things you discovered? Did you find anything interesting in the process? Okay, you're gonna remember me when now you have to run a transformation anytime soon. So I'm gonna go to the last part, and this is effectively this is hard. But if you don't think in terms of exponentiality, then what happens is as soon as you try to implement a change plan in the company, it can potentially fail. Because you don't have the resources, you don't have the skills, you don't have the people, you don't have the tools. And this is the kind of thing you have to have some consideration before. Also, one of the things that happened to me with an exponential plan was that the plan was very exponential in one company. For some reason that nobody knew, the plan didn't work. So I did some research. And after 2 or 3 weeks, I was talking to someone in the company, and I discovered what it was. The exponential plan was trying to replace a module, a piece of code, and some teams developed that piece of code, and they felt very, very proud of that piece of code. As a result of that, the whole exponential plan became very, very slow, because without even knowing, they were pulling back the plan. They didn't want that part of the code to disappear. And this is, I talk about this in one part of the book, and this is about ownership, psychological ownership. When companies have high levels of psychological ownership, you generally go more to linear than exponential. Because people feel proud of whatever they have done, and then it's very difficult to make a change plan. Does it make sense? So I talk about certain aspects that you have to look after. Are human aspects, most of them, but you need to know how to deal. Another thing is human beings are not well prepared for change. If you have to change constantly, your brain is not well prepared. And one of the things that generally produces a lot of people feel very scared, as it has the amygdala activation. Amygdala, you have two in your brain, or inside of brain. When you feel fear, it drops a lot of chemicals into your blood. One of the threats that are biggest, is when you lose some prestige, or when your position in the company changes. What happens is when you try to implement an exponential plan, if someone in the company has the feeling that their position now is going to be lower than before, then that person is going to pull the initiative back. Does it make sense? And sometimes they do it subconsciously, as what happens is the amygdala releases a lot of chemicals into your blood, and then the way it works is their brain starts generating some ideas that why they shouldn't do that, and all sound very reasonable. Because the amygdala works at very low level, even before that you're realizing that that is happening. And this is a very interesting thing, because most of the times when we run a transformation, we have a lot of resistance, and sometimes we don't know very well from where it's coming. And most of the time, what happens is the way that your brain works, even before you make a decision or you realize of that thought, the amygdala took over and made that decision already. The amygdala takes 80 microseconds to activate, and your brain realizes that that thought is there at 120 milliseconds. So what happens is at the time you realize that you have to change, you have to do something, if there was a threat a threat, your amygdala activated before, segregated some chemicals into your blood, and at the point of you making a decision, you're going to make a completely different decision. And one of the biggest threats you have in companies is when someone loses prestige or when someone feels that their position in the company is going to be downgraded. Okay? And this is what we see with the Scrum. We are telling managers, you are facilitators now. I see I'm facilitator. And perhaps they are saying yes, but they don't realize what's happening behind, right? So what we do in those cases in an exponential company is we include those people in a process to redefine the roles in the company. Does it make sense? Does it make sense whatever I'm saying? Yes? So there are certain aspects, human aspects, that are blocking you from change becoming contagious and becoming exponential. And all these aspects are very important to know. There are certain clues I mentioned in the book that you can realize that certain things are happening. Okay? And when you realize that, there are certain techniques you can use. For example, in the case of the amygdala, we have done MRIs. You know, MRIs with your head, with your brain, and we know exactly which area of the brain activates when certain situation happens. And certain situations are very similar to the situation that happen in the agile companies. So then, as a result of that, they have done this MRI, and they saw that there is, they diminish the activation of the amygdala. In cases where you have to do any change of the company where someone in the company is going to feel that the role is going to be downgraded, there are certain techniques you have to use in order for you or for the plan to be successful. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of people pulling back your plan. Does it make sense? And I'm going to go quickly just to one more thing. We are not going to have time, but I want just for you to see that, and then I tell you who's going to be the winner. Any question about the last thing? Does it make sense? Yes? So there are certain aspects, if you want your plan, that's why I say changing an organization is hard, but if you know the tricks, it makes things so much easier, right? So you see approach plus exponentially, or exponentiality. Yeah, and then in the book I include a lot of information about neuroscience, and I also include the sources, so you can go and check the numbers. What I've seen in many books is that they say something, but you don't know where it is, and sometimes it's very difficult to, and when a CEO asks you from where you are saying that, you have to tell them. Yeah. But that can be tricky, and you need to know the culture. When I was now in New Zealand, one of the CEOs of the company said, listen, Eric, I seen our competitor had a brilliant idea. What he did is he basically changed the role of higher management, and now they are called Scrum Masters. And that's working very good. Everyone does whatever they say. And I say, okay, that's interesting, but you know, we have a research 6,000 people, 6,000 companies, Europe and America, where basically says that this is one of the biggest problems in companies. This is one of the failures. One of the failures is when you do not have in companies people in charge of removing obstacles. And there are 6,000 companies, and they say companies that did something similar to this failed. And the CEO of this company looked at me, and he said, Eric, I don't believe on that piece of research. I said, oh my God, that's a 6,000 company. What's the reason? So what happened is, that was in New Zealand, was the biggest supermarket there. In their culture, numbers are not very important, but stories. If you have to tell someone something, you have to tell a story. I imagine in other cultures is the same. They don't care about numbers. They have to say that because the Maori culture, you know, the Maori, the indigents there, they used to tell stories to their kids. So then the culture is based in stories. So I basically show you also in the book how to identify. It looks like I'm selling the book, but I'm very passionate about what I do, right? I show you how to detect which technique to use. And I completely failed to detect that in New Zealand, if you have to tell a story, to tell numbers, it's not going to be worth. So you have to tell a story. And this is what happens in some companies. Some companies are based on numbers, others in stories, sometimes a mix. You can use anecdotes. You can use very different techniques. And it depends in each company. So before even trying to implement anything, just try to get the basics from change. That's going to help you a lot, and that's going to accelerate, I promise that's going to accelerate your change. And I want you to show you the last piece today. I'm not going to go too deep. It's going to be just 2 or 3 minutes just for you to see. In general, when you implement or try to implement a change, you generally go there and change a process or change something, right? And that's the way it works. So in the book, I'm including 2 frameworks. One framework, which is when the leaders of the organization are supporting change, and one framework which is when leaders are not supporting change. There is a way you can push a change. Shouldn't say push. You should implement a change even if the leaders of the organization are not supporting it. It's slower, but you can do it. But let's take a look at the ELSA change model quickly. So basically, the ELSA change model takes a completely fresh approach to make a change in the organization. So the ELSA change model, which belongs to the enterprise social systems, basically what they do, let me see if I can remove this. No, okay, doesn't matter. So instead of making a change, the first thing you do is to ask people to imagine that ideal day. How does it look an ideal day for you? What happens when you ask people to imagine an ideal day, it is that people, in general, get rid of all the blockage. And then imagine that day. And then what you do after is you ask those teams to create a new language, to see which words sound successful for them. And what you do is you ask them to start using those words, or you identify some key people in the company, start using those key language. Right? Then you basically add some structures for that language to spread into the company. Yes, for example, in some of the company, in one of the companies I work for some reason, the guys didn't want to use experiments for experiments. They had an experience before where there was a team doing trials, and trials were super successful. So what we did is, okay, we were just about running a prototype, running in Scrum in somewhere, and we started using not just that word of trial, we used other words from the team which was very successful. And it became very contagious, right? Because every time people said that, remember the other teams, right? And we basically created all the structures for people to communicate informally in the company and to support all those words. Does it make sense? Otherwise, people, they start using the words, and then they don't feel very comfortable. And finally, what is agency there? This is quite quickly. You have information on the internet. The agency is basically give the right tools in the company for people to take ownership of those ideas, processes, or things, and change them without being punished. Right? So after they run a trial, and everyone uses the word trial in the company, and everyone wants to use trial in the company, and everyone fall in love with trial, and everyone wants to run trials, then we give the structure for them to amplify that into the rest of the company, and then we put an agency to teach people how to run a trial, and then how to improve it. And this is, I do probably 4 hours with this framework, but just what I want you to leave today is just having in your mind that there is not just a way to implement a change. There are many ways to implement a change. But before even thinking of making a change or implementing Scrum or taking seriously this profession, try to see if there is anything, anywhere that you can grab a change framework that suits you, and then you just change it, improve it. Don't go on your own with good intentions. I believe long time ago that good intentions could lead to good outcomes, and I was wrong. And thank you very much, guys. I'm going to do the now the raffle. Yes. Any question? I know it's a lot of information. That's the idea today. You came here to learn. So I'm going to choose 2 people at random. Did everyone, you have the last minute?
You finished? This means you don't only show us this framework? And
Yes, yes.
That's not good.
No, it's not good. It's not good.
Right?
So it had to become exponential for, no, at least, I hesitated about showing you this, but my plan today was that you leave this room knowing that there are change frameworks you can use. Okay, that you don't have to suffer trying to guess how to do that. There is a lot of research, and there is a lot of things you can reuse in your company. And that's my final message. With that, plus knowing the 4 approaches, knowing how micro-habits work, and knowing what an exponential company is, and asking the question, what would happen if we had 100 instead of 10? I think it could be a very good beginning for you, okay? Okay, so, are you ready? So, the first winner is going to be, if they are not here, I'm sorry, we go for the next one. Mario Enrique. Oh. Thank you very much. I hope you enjoyed the book.
Thank you.
All the way from Canada. I brought them from Canada. One more. Okay, you ready? Who's Angelica? There are more Angelica? Yeah, you're the winner. Thank you very much. Guys, if you had, thank you very much. If you had any question, just the last thing to tell you how this book was born, it was here in Austria. I came here last year to give a presentation, and after the presentation, someone said, Eric, this is great, but where can I find more information? Okay, and I said, and then I went to Holland, and someone was presenting a book about Scrum. And I said, okay, someone can write a book about Scrum, I can write a book about change. But I didn't know what I was doing at that point in life. So everything started here, and that's why I wanted to come back here to bring some books with me. As I have been an inspiration last presentation here last year. And everything started with someone asking, curious about how to change an organization, yes? Thank you very much, guys, and hope you find it useful. And if you feel, you can contact me, yes? Send me an email. Thank you very much.